All right, guys. As usual, I thought I'd do something a little bit different today. I was reading a little bit here on Twitter about a complaint towards certain managers who had lineups out there that fans disagreed with. I know what a lot of the sabermetricians have said about this over time, that it doesn't matter really that much what order your guys are hitting in, so long as you pick the right players for your lineup. You know how I am with this. I like to order guys according to OPS because I'm kind of half old school, half new school in that style. I know that these days it's probably WOBA or something that I'm not going to be able to calculate easily in either one of these games that most of the smart Alex will use, but it's probably not too far off from what I would choose anyway. So I did a little bit of reading, a little bit of research, because I'd heard about Billy Martin picking the Yankees lineup out of a hat. And I'll show you here what I found. You can see this is an old Vice article. This is from over 5 years ago. So what year this is from, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Oh, there it is, April 21st, 2016. There's a little bit of a history of Billy Martin trying this. He tried it over in Denver. He did it with Detroit. I read somewhere where he also did this with Oakland. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. There's a lot of this sort of these apocryphal stories that come up around Billy Martin. So it might be true, might not. But what we do know is that it happened in 1977. It happened on April 20th, 1977. So we can go take a look and see what happened here. So if we go back to the beginning of the 77 season, right, the Yankees won and then they lost a whole bunch. We just pick a game at random. Let's look at this 13-inning loss here to Kansas City. We only want to look at the lineup. You can see, so you had Mickey Rivers leading off, then Roy White, Thurman Munson. They did have Reggie Jackson that season, but Martin, for some reason, is hitting him sixth, which is a little bit odd considering how much money he had and how notorious he was. We all know Bucky Dent from 78, but he was in this lineup as well. The shortstop, sure-handed, hitting ninth because it's the designated hitter era, of course. That's kind of the lineup that the Yankees had up before that. So if we look at the game on the 19th and the Yankees lose 8-3, and that they protested to Toronto for whatever reason Billy Martin saw fit, we can see that Reggie Jackson didn't actually play in this one. But again, it's Rivers, White, Munson, Wynn, and then Piniella, and then Nettles, and so on and so forth. Who knows why they protested this game? I don't know. There was probably something that Billy was upset about. I'm sure there's always something he doesn't like. Anyway, whatever. No note here. No explanation. I guess there is if I will look closer and settle down. Yeah, game was protested by home team but was disallowed. Thank you for the information. Now, this on April 20th for this game, this is the game that it happens, and you can see it happening here. Right, so the lineup changes. Now you have Randolph leading off with Thurman Munson hitting second, which made sense to nobody, followed by Reggie Jackson hitting third. Now you got to ask yourself, like, was this really a lineup out of the hat, or did Martin take down the names that he wanted and look at this and say, why do I have my slugger hitting sixth, right? Why don't we arrange it this way? Thurman Munson, I guess he saw as a good bunter and said, okay, well, you hit second, you know. Greg Nettles hit fourth, despite the fact that he was hitting 154 with a 179 slugging percentage. Explain that one, Sabermetricians. Then Rivers, White, May, Chambliss, and Dent. So kind of an odd alternative to the lineup, and the Yankees caught fire. Now, the reason why I want to make this is, why I wanted to make a video on this is in part because if you look at then the lineup, let's say in this game against Baltimore on April 25th, guess what the Yankees do? Randolph, Munson, Jackson, Nettles, Rivers, Wynn, White, Chambliss, and Dent. Does that look familiar? Yeah, that's the lineup that we just saw, right? So when you're thinking about this, you have to get out of your head this notion that Martin went over and chose a different lineup out of his hat every day. He didn't. He chose the same lineup. He chose the lineup once out of a hat. I don't think it was out of the hat. What I think he was actually doing is I think he was trying to mix things up a little bit so these players would be a little bit more on their toes, which I think worked very well. And then the Yankees started to win, right? How long did this last? I don't know how long it lasts. I mean, let's pick this at random. July 1st, 1977. And look at this. Rivers, Randolph, Munson, Chambliss. So, I mean, the lineup has changed a bit by this point, but it's only changed a little bit, right? It's still somewhat similar to what they had before, except, of course, you have Reggie going back to hitting sixth. So he did sort of go back to something that was more standard. We can look all the way up here, for example, August 29th against Kansas City, and we see Rivers, Nettles, Munson, Jackson. So it's changed again, and it's sort of morphed itself again. Interesting stuff to look at, sort of what the lineup ends up looking like. Now, if we go look at the team itself, as we know that we should do, we'll be able to see sort of the lineup frequency. So you remember what the batting orders look like for teams that are really, really old. Yeah, you can see here was Rivers all the time hitting first, and then Randolph all of a sudden is in there. And then he was sort of switching between Rivers and Randolph leading off. And that's kind of what happens for the rest of the season. Interesting stuff, right? Hitting second, Munson was in there just for a little while, but not for too long. And then Munson ends up hitting third there for a good part of the season. Jackson was really either hitting third or fourth or sixth, as we saw. I think mostly hitting the sixth spot, and on and on and on. We can go down here and see that this is sort of the this would be Jay Richard Seitz's nightmare, because you're like, how do you put together this lineup, right? With either Rivers or Randolph hitting first like half the time, with all sorts of changes so that nobody's hitting in the same place all the time, with the exception of Munson starting in the number 3 slot most of the season. So pretty interesting stuff. And just looking down here, no, none of those, that lineup in the hat doesn't really show up here at all in terms of the most common batting order, so it wasn't used necessarily that frequently. Just another thing that I want to look at, just out of curiosity. So if we go over here to the New York papers and see if we can find that, we should be able to. So this is what this looks like when you pay the money. You get access to all this really cool stuff, right? We're going to go look at the 21st of April and just see if there's any sort of mention of this. And I hate it when this website does this, because you have like 800 pages. I mean, the paper was 120. That was it. Yankees end slide. And let's see if we can find any information about this. Yankees pulling out a hat 7-5, right? So this is sort of where that legend grows. Normally occupying a back-end spot in the Yankees order, Randolph drew the leadoff role in the lineup that was drawn from Martin's cap. Right? As for Martin, whose cap may make Cooper sound if he doesn't, he glowed with satisfaction. Same lineup tomorrow, he said. What the heck? I can't go against the hat, can I? Yeah. There you have it. So this got a whole bunch of play and a whole bunch of attention right from the start, and they won again. And, I'll save you sort of the pain of going through every single one of these old papers and trying to figure out exactly what it was like and if they knew ahead of time and all this other stuff. I mean, you'll leave that for the historians. People like me don't need to worry about any of this stuff, and I think it was really the end of the baseball news. Interesting how little baseball news there was by 77. You compare this with the 1949 papers. I mean, there was really only one page and then the very back, and that was it. Whereas in 1949, you would get multiple pages, multiple sections, all sorts of articles on it, articles talking about games not in New York and stuff like that. So, maybe the real fall of baseball happened back in 77 instead. Anyway, at any rate, there you have it for Billy Martin and for the lineup out of the hat in 1977. I suppose that it worked. And if we look at the batting order for, say, the first game of the World Series, Randolph was hitting second, not first. It was Rivers, Randolph, Munson, which is a little bit more normal with Jackson hitting fourth. You can look at the famous game, which is this one, Game 6. It was, again, Rivers, Randolph, Munson, Jackson. So there you have it. Honestly, my opinion is that Martin probably should have had Jackson hitting third or fourth from the start of the season. That probably would have helped a little bit, right? But, maybe he knew something I didn't. I don't know. Or maybe he was very inebriated. Either one of those is possible. Maybe both is true at the same time. Talk to you later. Bye.